Okay friends, it's time to get started on our outside door handle. Let's start by getting inside, and we're going to start taking off this door panel. To do that, we're going to remove this outer portion here. I'm just going to carefully get in between this area and gently separate it without trying to break it. Pop that off, inspect it, set it aside. Now behind that, you're going to find two mounting bolts. Let's go ahead and remove the pair. Now we're going to move up along to this area right here, essentially doing the same thing. I'm going to try to use a plastic trim tool because I can get it into this area. We're just going to gently try to pop this off. Inspect it, set it aside. Now I'm going to come right up to this area here. We're going to carefully pop this up as well. There's some locking tabs. You can kind of see where these metallic areas are. Let's just go ahead and carefully get in between this area, gently pry. And now we can lift this up. Underneath that, you're going to find the wiring for your window switch. Let's just go ahead and spin this. You can see that there's a little tab right where my thumb is. I'm going to squeeze this and we'll gently pull it away. Anytime you remove an electrical connector, inspect it. If you see any funny colors, it's corrosion and it needs to be dealt with. This looks fine, so I'll go ahead and put it right in here. And now we can move along to removing our two other bolts that are located inside this area. Let's use my 7mm, get it in here. To safely get this bolt out of here, I'm going to use my magnet, carefully get it in here. I'm going to try to grab onto that bolt so it doesn't fall down. And now I'll do the same to the other. Feeling along this area here, I can feel that there's one bolt down along the very bottom. Let's go ahead and remove that as well. Now what we're going to do is carefully grab onto this. I want to hold along the bottom and along this area. I'm going to try to carefully lift this up and start pulling it away. Keep in mind that there is still going to be a cable that comes up here to the door handle. There we are. Now let's have a peek behind here. Right along this area, you can see where the cable leads right up along the door panel and into this area right here. To get this out, we need to grab some long nose pliers, and we're going to come in here and squeeze the two tabs so we can pop this free, bring it out, and then we'll take it out of this. Just going to twist it so I can see my tabs. Grab onto both of them, squeeze them in. Go ahead and carefully bring this out and through the slot that's in the door panel. Grab this, pull it out as well. We'll just inspect it, and now we can set the door panel aside. Now at this point, we're going to get ready to start taking down our vapor barrier right here. You're going to notice that you have your wiring that comes through this slot, and then it comes up to this point right here where it's mounted. I'm going to use my fork tool, and I'm going to carefully get in between this area and the door and gently pry. Essentially, we just want to pop this right out of here. There we are. Now at this point, pay attention to where this comes through as well. There's kind of like a little cutout that's in the vapor barrier. It's super important to remember where these come from. So this one comes through this top area, and then the lower area where the wires are comes through this area. Now let's carefully grab onto this. We're going to start pulling it away from the door. Now we're going to carefully reach inside the door. We're going to come right over to where you can see the rod comes down to this area here. This is like a little latch. Essentially, I just want to carefully grab onto this nub where my index finger is. I'm going to pull this towards me to unlock it. Now we can pull that rod right out of the way. We can leave this hanging at this point, or if you wanted to, you could just try to pull it up and then pull it out. So to do that, I'll just swing it up, and then you can carefully just pull it right out of the red tab that's in there, and we can set this aside. Now let's use an 11mm socket and a short ratchet, and I'm going to carefully reach up in here, and I'm essentially going to try to go for the hardest nut first, which is going to be located over towards this area of the door handle. Just reach my hand up in here. We'll completely remove this nut, and then we'll do the other one. All right, I've got the other one out. Let's go ahead and do the same to this one right here. This one's a little bit easier to get to. Now keep in mind, after you remove this nut, there isn't going to be anything holding this door handle in. Now on the outside of the door, let's carefully grab onto this. Now at this point, you're going to notice that it feels a little stuck. Just go ahead and pull on that handle a little bit, and then we should be able to weasel it right out. And there it is, friends. Now let's clean up the area on the door where the seal is going to be. It's super important to clean this up so it'll help keep moisture and debris out. All right, now it's time to install our brand new door handle. Let's have a look at the back. You have the area that has the gasket. We essentially want to try keeping this on there while we continue. When we start putting this up against the door, you're going to want to go ahead and pull on this door handle just like we had to do to remove the original, and slide it in just like this, and then roll it down and into position. All right, double check to make sure that the seal doesn't look like it's coming out anywhere. This looks great. So let's get inside the vehicle, and now we'll go ahead and put on those nuts and then snug them up. Let's go ahead and take that nut. That one started. We'll do the same to the other one. Once they're both started, we can snug them up. Okay, so right there it felt as though it kind of wanted to stop / bottomed out. So I'm just going to give it just a teeny bit more. Obviously I don't want to break anything, but I do want to make sure that it's nice and snug so it can't vibrate loose while I'm driving. We'll go ahead and do the same to the other one. Then we can continue on to that rod. Okay, so right there it bottomed out. We'll just give it that tiny bit more here. Perfect. Now at this point, you can see right where that rod's going to have to go. We have this little white bobble there. So let's just go ahead and take this rod. We're going to come in just like this. We're going to put it through and then bring it down so it looks like that. There we are. Now at this point, let's go ahead and carefully grab onto that rod. We're going to swing it into position right into that yellow piece. Go ahead and press that in, and then we'll lock it down by squeezing that tab as tight as we can. Listen for a click, and then grab the rod and give it a nice wiggle. You want to make sure that that clip is completely locked in so it doesn't vibrate free. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to open up your door from the outside. Now that we have that together, the next thing that I always like to do before I put everything the rest of the way together is just test it. To do that, I'm going to use a short extension like this. I'm going to come right in between this area of the latch. Essentially, I want to pretend that this is the striker on the body of the vehicle, and I'm going to go ahead and close the door. Now at this point, the door thinks that it's closed. I'm going to try to press in this direction, trying to force this apart. You can tell that it doesn't want to move for me. I'll grab onto that outer door handle, and we're going to test it. When I did that, you can see that it released the door, and the door would have opened at that point. Let's go ahead and try it one last time. It's latched. I'm pressing as hard as I can. Pull on that handle, and there it goes. Now at this point, we can start reinstalling our door panel. Now we can start putting our wiring through the vapor barrier. I'm going to come right through that hole that we remember where it's supposed to be. Go ahead and pull that right on through. Now we can also grab that cable. That's going to come through this upper hole right here. Let's go ahead and put the vapor barrier into position. The way that you can tell that it's going to be lined up is with these notches that's in the vapor barrier. They're supposed to kind of fit into the rectangles that you can see all over the door. We'll get those into position. All right, and now we'll just go all the way around the door panel, pressing down the butyl tape up against the door to hold the vapor barrier in position. Let's get this wire on here. Okay, now it's time to put on the door panel. Let's have a look at the inside aspect of this. You can see that you have all of these hooks that go around the door panel. Pay attention to those because they need to line up with the corresponding holes that are in the door itself. Essentially all those rectangles that I talked to you about earlier. As we start putting this up near here, the next thing that I want to talk about is this cable. We're going to have to take the little bobble that's at the end. We're going to put this right into position, right in here. Bring it around, and now I'm just going to go ahead and tug on the outer portion of this so I can bring the inner portion through the slot, and then we'll lock it in. Listen for that click. Make sure it's secure. Now let's go ahead and bring this in. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the door lock itself. Make sure that this is in the unlocked position, so this is up as high as it can. Now we're going to bring the door panel in, line this up with the corresponding hole, and then we'll start pressing the door panel up against the door as hard as we can without breaking the door off of the vehicle, and bringing it down at the same time to lock in all of those latches on the backside. Once you feel as though you have it slid down, double check all the way around. Make sure the door panel is completely up against the door. This feels great. If it doesn't, and it seems like it's kind of pulled away, you might have missed one of the hooks. If that's the case, carefully lift it up. Make sure that you're still lined up with the door lock, press it in, and slide it down. This looks great, so let's continue. Now we can move along to putting in our screws. I'm going to start down here at the lower ones. That's easier to see. Just go ahead and start it right onto the socket here. We'll get it into position, start it in. Once it's started, we'll do the same to the other one. Now we'll come up here, we'll do these two. Once they're all started, we can snug them up. Okay, let's snug them up. Let's do the bottom screw. Time for the window switch. Listen for a click, give it a tug to make sure it's secured. Now we're just going to bring it down and we're going to line up our 4 tabs that are on this with the corresponding holes up along the top to lock it in. Okay, it's lined up. Loving bonk, make sure that's secured. Now we can move along to this piece right here. Having a look at the back, this area right along here, which essentially is going to come up along the top, needs to kind of slide in first, and then once we bring it down, we'll lock in all of our locking tabs into their corresponding holes. There we are, feels like it's lined up. Time for this one, same thing. You've got those tabs, corresponding holes. Okay, we got it all back together. Let's just give it one final test. Perfect.